Checkup by BOQ Specialist, a series of podcasts created specifically for current and future doctors, dentists and vets.
While arranging an elective is part of completing your degree, it is something you need to organise independently. An elective ultimately takes place in uni holidays and therefore can disrupt the ability to work, leaving many students out of pocket. Having said that, the experience is priceless and provides the opportunity for hands-on involvement, to broaden your understanding in an area of real interest to you and to develop your knowledge and skills while strengthening your network. One student who managed to secure a local elective is Amy Healy, a final year med student at the University of New South Wales. Amy was a successful recipient of the BOQ Specialist Future Focus grant in 2021 and used the grant to assist with the costs associated with her elective. Amy, thank you so much for joining us today to discuss your elective experience. It's really great to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me, Sarah.
So you've just completed a 4-week elective with the neonatal intensive care team at the Royal Hospital for Women in Sydney. I would love to know what made you choose this particular elective.
So my interest area to begin with is within addiction medicine. So over my years, crunching through the degree, I found this interest in low socioeconomic health and barriers for these kinds of populations in accessing healthcare. So that was the initial interest that spurred me towards looking into this elective, I guess. So this elective, I had a focus on neonatal abstinence syndrome, which is when babies are born with some kind of addiction as they were exposed to drugs while in utero or during the pregnancy. And obviously that is going to give them a bit of a rough start to life. So my interest here did grow from that addiction perspective, which has kind of since grown into an interest in paediatric medicine.
What exactly was it that got you into that initial kind of interest in the first place?
So I think everyone has some kind of experience with, I guess, a family member or someone having trouble with alcohol or even smoking. It's something that is really kind of prevalent within our community. And for me, that's where that interest started, particularly in kind of alcohol addiction and the effect that that can have on people, not only in their physical health, but in their mental health and well-being. And as I explored this a little bit further, that kind of grew to looking at the opioid epidemic and the issues associated with opioids and addiction there, as well as a bit of recreational drug use. I guess we've all heard in the news about music festivals and drug use there. So all these different, opportunities presented themselves when I, expressed some interest, and that just continued to grow my interest in all these different areas of addiction, really.
You're saying that's within our community here, and obviously these effects are global. With COVID, you weren't able to do your elective overseas, unfortunately. But if you could have, would you have gone overseas to sort of explore this interest in an elective overseas as well? Or did this come about more because you were forced to be local with your elective?
I think this is an opportunity that I would not have experienced if I had had that option to go overseas. So I think that I've definitely been really lucky in that element that I've got to explore our more local issues. However, I think I probably would have loved to explore healthcare within Indonesia, actually. So again, that low socioeconomic health, poor health literacy often, and particularly just in a country that is so close to us, but so different in terms of healthcare access and education.
So if you get the opportunity to go there, would you still seek that?
Yeah, I'd love to explore a little bit of medicine outside of our kind of more developed country. I think that's a really invaluable experience that can make you more aware of the issues around you and the privileges that we have here with our kind of nationwide healthcare service.
I suppose there's a silver lining to COVID in the sense that if you had gone overseas for your elective, you wouldn't have gained the insights that you did going locally. What would you have said the main benefits were of completing your elective locally as opposed to going overseas?
I'm about to graduate and work in this healthcare system probably for a very long time. So it's really exciting to explore all the different career options that are located within our health system. Because obviously we're assigned to hospitals throughout our degree, and not all of those hospitals are going to offer every opportunity and every career option it is such a diverse career. We have so many options, and I don't think I would have explored this kind of niche little area if I had had that opportunity to go elsewhere. So that's something that's been really special.
Would you say that learning the sort of hospital systems locally, I mean, I suppose every hospital has its own system, but like being able to experience that in a local manner where you're going to be working in the future is maybe helpful too?
Oh, it's so helpful. Every system is different. Every hospital is different. The structure on who you ask for help, which is obviously going to be really important in those first few years. But I think the other thing that we don't really put as much emphasis on how valuable it is just sitting down and having conversations with those doctors around you and allied health and nursing and kind of looking at your career options. A lot of people might end up at the same destination, but they definitely don't take the same path to get there. And I think a big part of what you can get out of elective is sitting down and having these conversations. Because, that's a really special thing that you often don't get the time to do in like the placement setting.
Yeah, I can see how that's really invaluable. You don't know what you don't know, and then when you speak to people who have been through it, all sorts of different thoughts and doors can open. But if we step back even a little bit, are you able to just explain how you came about actually facilitating this elective, like from the application process to the costs involved to kind of how that happened?
I think it is very dependent on your uni to start with. I can only speak from my experiences at the University of New South Wales. It also depends on the hospital and the area of interest you're applying for. So for me, it was really straightforward. I sent an email to admin at the Royal Women's Hospital and said, hey, I'm really keen on this. Is there someone you could put me in touch with? I'd really like to explore this. And they forwarded on my email, got me in touch with someone. The first person, I think, said, oh, sorry, it's not really something we can offer at the moment with COVID. And they passed me on to someone else who said, we'd love to take you on and get you involved in the team, which was really awesome. That is also dependent state by state as well. During COVID, looking into Victorian-based things, it was all very messy with borders. I had a lot of friends apply for the Northern Territory. Often those placements you need to go through a university and there's an application fee associated, but those application fees seem to regularly go towards accommodation costs later on. So there is kind of that silver lining there.
So you didn't actually know anyone who worked there or had previously done an elective at the Royal Hospital for Women before?
I think that's the biggest thing with electives. There's this kind of talk that you need to know someone and have an in and have these connections, but the reality is across the board in this degree, if you show that you're interested and express that you're keen to get involved and you have a level of excitement, people are really excited to teach. People are really excited to share all the things that they've learnt and the things they wish they knew sooner. So I've had really positive experiences where if you just kind of reach out and express that interest, people are really receptive. Most of the time, obviously there's going to be some times where they're not so interested, and what you probably don't want to take those electives because at the end of the day, how good your team is will really affect how good your elective term is. And if they're not super keen to have you on board, then they're probably not going to be super keen to teach.
So having said that, did your expectation, how did that compare to the actual reality? Were you expecting something completely different or was it pretty much in line with what you were thinking?
I think probably the mood of the ward that I was on was very different to what I expected. I expected it to be kind of intense and a little bit sad and to just have that kind of eerie, unpleasant feel to it. But that was just completely opposite to what I saw. The team they were full of life and energy and joy, and they spread that to parents. They gave hope, but in a very realistic sense. There was never kind of this, it'll all be okay, because a lot of the time it won't be, and that's unfortunately the reality. But I think that was probably the biggest difference, just the general atmosphere, which was something really special.
It's such a sad circumstance that these kids are in the unit for. So to have that uplifting positivity within the culture of the doctors themselves, but obviously that seeps out into the patients, I think that's really amazing. And did you find it was really hands-on experience for you? Like, did they get you really involved, or was it more voyeuristic and watching and learning from a distance?
There was definitely a lot of watching and learning from the distance. There's a lot of maths involved, which probably wouldn't think from an outsider perspective. It's a lot of technical equipment that is well above my understanding. So there was definitely a lot of wait and watch, but they were very keen to teach and talk me through everything that they were doing. I got to see different techniques of achieving similar outcomes, which is always really helpful. And they did try and get me as hands-on as I could be. So I was kind of checking newborn babies to make sure that they were safe to go home. I'd be taken to delivery suites for the higher risk deliveries and cesarean sections. So lots of births and lots of just those initial kind of getting the baby going for life. There's a fair bit of rubbing them up and getting them going. And so I got to be very involved in that, which is very special to be part of and share that with the parents. Quite a privilege, really. And it's also just very sweet watching these little ones come into the world.
Were you the only one doing an elective there? Were there any other students within the ward at the same time?
Yeah, so there was one other student who was my year level, and that was quite good because we got to bounce ideas off each other. If you're a little bit nervous about, oh, can I do this? You can ask, you can go together, which it's actually quite helpful having another student there to be that moral or emotional support, because it can be quite intimidating. In a hospital you don't know, with people you don't know. As a student, you often feel like you're in the way. So that was quite nice.
Do you feel as though this elective experience has encouraged you to pursue a career within the sort of neonatal intensive care arena or put you off?
I think a little bit of everything. I really enjoyed the medicine aspect of what we were doing there. It was really interesting. Like I said, it's very technical. Emotionally, it would probably be a little bit too much for me. There's a lot of difficult conversations with parents. There's even often the good outcomes and the survival. You're still going to have children who have disabilities, whether they're physical or intellectual, down the path, which is a really challenging thing to watch and know that you can't really do anything about. It's also a really challenging thing to tell the parents and to educate them on how to best help their children and what that's going to look like from a developmental perspective.
So do you have any idea where you'd like to specialise in the future, or are you just looking forward to finishing uni, getting into your internship and doing those rotations so you can sample a bit of everything?
Yeah, so I am really looking forward to getting into work. Medicine is a really long journey. It's a lot of years being a student, which can be a bit financially tough. So that's why the Future Focus grant was just so beneficial and so helpful to get these electives done and to be able to do them in an area I was keen on. But yeah, in future, I'm looking forward to giving everything a little bit of a go. I think this elective has made me realise I do have an interest in critical care, whether that's within a paediatric space. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I could take that emotional toll every day, but I'm definitely have this interest within that critical care space.
Some level of direction it's helped at least.
Absolutely.
And then I'd love to know what advice you might give for someone looking to sort of plan their elective now, because I know that's kind of ramping up within the universities for those in their penultimate and final years at the moment. So have you got any kind of golden nuggets of advice?
I think the most important thing is find something that you're interested in. If you are interested, it's easy. You will get along with the team and you'll get so much more out of it. If you're just there to tick a box, it's going to be a waste of time for you. It's going to be a waste of time for the team. Another big thing is finding a team that you get along with, that you're inspired by, because at the end of the day, you're going to get so much more out of it if you are enjoying yourself and the people that are around you. And as I touched on earlier, being able to sit down and have those career-focused conversations and what the hours are like or what the lifestyle's like or what kind of things are involved in each of the jobs that everyone at different levels of the medical practice work at is so invaluable, because it's not something you get taught within your degree, but it's going to be your lifestyle at the end of the day. So that's something that I would really recommend taking the time to do.
And would you recommend to go ahead with a local elective despite the fact that borders are opening and you can travel overseas easily enough now? Would you still recommend that actually you got such a lot out of your local experience?
I absolutely would. I wouldn't change my experience at all. But obviously, overseas placement's very tempting, very exciting. So I can understand that absolutely as well. But to be able to learn the system that you're going to be a part of and the range of people that you're going to have to deal with, and you have the opportunity to support from a health perspective is just so beneficial.
Yeah, and I guess not having that extra travel and costs associated, right? You mentioned the Future Focus grant was helpful for your elective. And what exactly did that cover for you?
Oh, absolutely. So I'm actually rural based. So coming to Sydney for the month was quite an out-of-pocket expense. Sydney, unfortunately, doesn't have the cheapest rent going around. It went towards accommodation costs and the fuel. I'm about an 8-hour drive from Sydney, so with fuel prices rising, it's a little bit of an expense. So that was so helpful in getting me through that and being able to take the time off work to be able to complete that elective, which was fantastic.
But now you're in Sydney.
Yes.
And are you set to kind of have a future in Sydney, or are you looking to maybe go into rural medicine?
I'm really excited to spend a few years in Sydney to, I guess, get those exposures of those more kind of niche and technical areas, because it's unfortunately those training opportunities aren't offered in the rural setting at the moment. So yeah, I think I'll be here for a little bit, but we'll see what happens in the future. I'm definitely not opposed to pursuing a career in rural medicine.
If I was a student right now looking to set up and secure an elective, would you recommend the neonatal intensive care unit at the Royal Hospital for Women in Sydney?
Oh, I absolutely would. The team there are just fantastic. They are so keen to teach. They're so keen to have you on board. If you're interested in research, they have a lot of research opportunities going on, so you can get involved in that. And yeah, you get that obstetrics kind of experience as well, being able to attend deliveries, and overall just a really supportive team and a great opportunity.
And while you're making recommendations, would you recommend that they apply for the Future Focus grant in 2022?
I absolutely would. I could not recommend it highly enough. It has really just cemented my ability to complete electives and be financially comfortable coming into my final year of studies.
Oh, well, Amy, it's been so brilliant to speak with you today. And I can't thank you enough for sharing all of this great information about your experience. I've got absolutely no doubt that anyone listening will benefit greatly from the insights that you've provided. And I really wish you all the very best as you complete your studies this year and delve into your career.
Thank you very much, and thanks for having me today.
Thanks, Amy. And for the listeners, BOQ Specialist is incredibly proud to support students throughout their electives, and we look forward to supporting more students undertaking their electives this year with Future Focus 2022 launching shortly. If you would like to find out more about Amy's individual elective experience, be sure to visit our website at www.boqspecialist.com.au/Future Focus, where Amy outlines a bit more detail into her elective experience, but have a box of tissues handy because it's a bit of a tearjerker.
For more information on finance and banking solutions for students and graduates, please call 1300 131141 or visit boqspecialist.com.au/students. This podcast is for general information purposes only and not intended as financial or professional advice. It has been prepared without reference to the circumstances of any particular person or business and should not be relied on as such. You should seek your own independent financial, legal and taxation advice before making any decisions. The views expressed in this podcast are those of the speakers alone and do not represent the views or opinions of BOQ Specialist.